They mocked her, humiliated her, and treated her like she was nothing more than a servant. But everything changed the moment a billionaire walked into the room, looked straight at the African maid they had accused, and said 5 words no one was ready to hear.
Let her go.
She is not a maid. She is my daughter. In the DaCosta mansion, silence had
She
rules.
is my daughter.
The polished floors reflected crystal lights. The silver trays shone brighter than mirrors. The perfume in the air was expensive enough to feed a family for months. But none of that beauty belonged to Nalia. She was the quiet maid from the north wing, the girl who moved like she was apologizing for breathing. She served tea, folded silk napkins, and kept her eyes down, because in that house, eye contact from a servant was treated like rebellion. But on the morning everything changed, it was not a broken plate or a late breakfast that caused the storm. It was a missing emerald bracelet. Madame Essie stood in the middle of the dining room like a queen insulted by the universe. Her guests had not even finished breakfast when she raised her wrist and gasped. The bracelet was gone. It had been on her arm during prayers, she said. On her arm when she greeted the women from the charity board. On her arm when Nalia poured the hibiscus tea. Every eye turned. Nalia froze. Silène, the polished fiancée of Madame Essie's son, was the first to speak. Check the maid. She did not say Nalia's name. She never did. To Silène, the workers were uniforms, not people. Nalia's fingers tightened around the empty tray. "Ma'am, I did not take anything." Madame Essie gave a cold laugh. "That is exactly what a thief would say." The room went quiet in the cruelest way. Not shocked, not doubtful, ready. Ready to watch someone poor be blamed because it made the rich feel safe. Then one voice cut through the tension. "That is enough." It was Tariro DaCosta. He had just walked in from the terrace, still in a dark linen shirt, his phone in one hand, impatience on his face. He was the only son of business tycoon Kwesi DaCosta, and unlike the others, he still looked at people as if they existed. Madame Essie turned sharply. "Stay out of this." Tariro glanced from his mother to Nalia. "You lost a bracelet. That does not make her a criminal." Silène crossed her arms. "Why are you defending a maid?" Tariro's eyes stayed on Nalia. "I am defending common sense." But common sense had no seat at that table. Madame Essie ordered Nalia's room searched. 2 guards went upstairs. Nalia stood in the dining room while the women whispered around her as though she were already guilty. One guest leaned close to another and murmured, "These girls come from nowhere and suddenly find themselves in luxury. Temptation is natural." Nalia heard it. She heard everything. She heard the laughter that followed. She heard Silène mutter, "This is why boundaries are important." She heard her own heartbeat louder than all of them. Then the guards came back. No bracelet. Madame Essie did not apologize. She simply lifted her chin and said, "Be more careful next time, girl." Girl. Not Nalia. Not sorry. Just girl. The guests returned to their tea. The conversation resumed. The insult was treated like a small inconvenience, something that would disappear if everyone ignored it fast enough. But Tariro did not move. He watched Nalia as she lowered her gaze and backed away with the tray. And for the first time, he noticed something strange. She was humiliated, but she was not broken. That same afternoon, the mansion lost power. Half the kitchen screamed. The chef blamed the generator team. The housekeeper blamed the weather. Madame Essie blamed the staff. In the confusion, one of the cold storage units began to fail, and expensive seafood meant for that night's pre-gala dinner was minutes away from being ruined. While everyone panicked, Nalia slipped behind the service corridor, opened the backup panel, and reset the relay switch with practiced speed. The lights came back. The kitchen erupted in relief. The chef blinked at her. "How did you do that?" Nalia wiped her hands on her apron. The second circuit always trips when both freezers and the pastry ovens run together. The chef stared. "Who taught you that?" "My uncle repaired village school generators," she said quietly. "I used to help him." Before he could answer, Toriro stepped out from the doorway. He had seen everything. "You understand electrical load?" he asked. Nalia straightened. "Only a little, sir." He looked at the panel, then at her. That was not a little. She lowered her eyes again. "I was only trying to save the food." Toriro should have walked away. In that house, the invisible were meant to remain invisible. But something about her unsettled him. She spoke like someone educated, careful, disciplined. Not like the foolish caricature the household had assigned to her. That evening, while the others prepared for guests, Toriro found her in the courtyard helping old Mama Shad, the laundry woman, read a medicine label. Mama Shad's hands shook too much to hold the paper steady. Nalia read every word slowly, then explained which tablets to take after food and which to take before sleep. She even counted the days aloud so the old woman would not forget. "You read well," Toriro said. Nalia stepped back immediately. "I finished secondary school." "And then?" She hesitated. "And then life happened." That answer stayed with him. The next few days only deepened the mystery. When the flower contractor failed to arrive, Nalia rearranged the ballroom decor better than the event manager had planned. When the junior cook made a budgeting error, Nalia corrected the numbers in her head before anyone touched a calculator. When a donor from Rwanda visited the mansion office and complained that a report had a translation issue, Nalia softly offered the correct French phrase under her breath. Toriro heard it. So did Celine. And Celine did not like what she heard. Women like Celine had spent their lives believing status was proof of superiority. A girl in a maid's uniform who knew too much felt dangerous. Not because she had power, but because she reminded everyone how fragile fake power really was. That evening, Celine cornered Nalia in the pantry. "You are forgetting yourself," she said. Nalia frowned slightly. "Ma'am?" Celine took a step closer. "My future husband notices you too often. My future mother-in-law is speaking your name too often. You are staff. Behave like staff." Nalia's expression did not change. "I have never disrespected you." Celine smiled without warmth. "Girls like you always say that, right before they overstep." Nalia said nothing. Celine leaned in. "If I were you, I would learn the wisdom of being small." When she left, Nalia stood still for several seconds, breathing through the humiliation. Then she opened the pantry shelf, took out a folded brown notebook hidden behind a stack of table linens, and held it against her chest like a secret. That notebook was the part of her no one in the mansion knew existed. Inside were sketches. Building sketches. Market stall layouts. Simple drainage systems. Low-cost housing ideas. Community kitchens. Childcare spaces connected to women's work centers. Every page was covered in careful pencil notes and measurements. Some were smudged from being opened too often. Others were clean, as if drawn on nights when hope had briefly defeated exhaustion. Nalia had once dreamed of becoming an architect, not because she wanted fame, because she knew what it meant to live in places built without dignity. She had grown up in a crowded settlement where rainwater entered homes like an invited guest, and women cooked in spaces too narrow to stand in straight. When her mother died, school became a luxury. Work became survival. The dream did not vanish. It simply went underground. One afternoon, Tariro found the notebook by accident. He had gone to the service veranda looking for a missing file and saw it half hidden beneath a folded cloth. He should not have opened it, but he did. And what he saw stunned him. These were not random drawings. They were intelligent, practical, human. A design for worker housing with cross-ventilation. A market route that separated waste and foot traffic. A small clinic with a maternity corner attached to a learning center. Nalia appeared in the doorway and froze. For one terrible second, she thought he would laugh. Instead, Tariro slowly looked up and said, "Did you draw these?" Her voice was cautious. "Yes." "All of them?" "Yes." He turned another page. "This one. This is good." Nalia said nothing because praise frightened people who had lived too long without it. Tariro looked back at her. "Why are you working here?" She gave a sad little smile. "Because drawings do not pay rent." For a moment, he forgot the gap between them, the mansion, the uniforms, the rules. All he saw was talent trapped in the wrong story. But they were not alone. Chief Badu had seen enough from the corridor to become interested. He was Kwesi DaCosta's oldest advisor, a man whose voice was always calm and whose smile never reached his eyes. He handled land deals, political relationships, and the unpleasant tasks rich men preferred to call strategy. He had spent years protecting the empire from threats, and he knew one when he saw one. That night, he had Nalia's belongings searched, not openly, quietly, professionally, the way dangerous men did everything. When the notebook reached his hands, he noticed something most others would have ignored. Tucked into the final pages were copied survey markings from a coastal settlement outside Accra. The exact same community Chief Badu was trying to clear for a private resort project. Nalia had family there, which meant she had seen enough to become inconvenient. The next morning, the trap was set. A sealed envelope containing internal redevelopment papers disappeared from Tariro's desk. An hour later, the envelope was found beneath folded sheets in the staff laundry room. Hidden there, the housekeeper announced, by none other than Nalia. Madame Essie was furious. Celine looked satisfied. Chief Badu looked concerned in the polished way villains always do before they burn a house down and ask who struck the match. Nalia was dragged into the office and accused of stealing confidential company documents. "I never touched them," she said. Chief Badu sighed like a disappointed father. "Then how did they get into your section?" "I do not know." Madame Essie slammed her palm on the desk. "First jewelry, now documents. This girl is poison." Tariro stepped forward. "This makes no sense. Why would she steal papers she cannot even use?" Nalia's eyes flashed for the first time. "I can read them." The room went still. She had not meant to say it like that, but the truth was out. Chief Badu seized on it instantly. Interesting. Nalia realized too late what she had done. Tariro looked at her, not with anger, but with dawning understanding. Madame Essie looked at her as if a chair had just started speaking. "You can read corporate files?" Celine asked with contempt. Nalia swallowed. I said I can read, ma'am. Chief Badu spoke softly. Perhaps that is exactly the problem. And just like that, it was decided. No police. The DaCostas were too elegant for scandal. But Nalia was dismissed immediately, denied wages for the month, and ordered to leave before the family's charity gala that evening. She packed in silence. Mama Sade cried while folding her spare dress. The chef slipped some food into her bag. One of the gardeners pressed transport money into her hand. Tariro came to the servants' quarters just as she was tying her bundle. "This is wrong," he said. Nalia kept packing. "Wrong things happen quickly in houses like this. I will fix it." She looked at him then, tired, proud, hurt. "No, sir. You will argue, and they will tell you family matters are complicated. Then everyone will dress for the gala, and by tomorrow, I will be a story nobody wants to remember." "That is not true." She lifted the brown notebook and slid it into her bag. "It already is." Then she left. The mansion gates closed behind her with the cold finality of money. For the first time in years, Nalia had nowhere respectable to go. She returned to Old Corle, where the roads were narrow and the walls remembered rain. Children played with a punctured football between kiosks. Women sold fried fish under patched umbrellas. A sewing machine rattled from one doorway, gospel music from another. It was poor, loud, alive. And unlike the mansion, it did not pretend to be kind while crushing people. She stayed with Mama Efua, an old midwife who had once known her mother. When Mama Efua saw Nalia's face, she asked no questions. She only opened the door wider. That night, Tariro did something unexpected. Instead of attending the gala rehearsal, he went looking for her. He found Old Corle just before sunset. He found the lane. He found the room. And when Mama Efua saw his expensive watch and polished shoes, she almost shut the door in his face. "I am not here to harm her," he said. "You rich people always say that before harm arrives, dressed as help." Read as a single male narrator in a storytelling style. Keep the pace slightly fast. Minimize pauses as much as possible. Maintain emotional weight, clarity, and dramatic momentum throughout. Tariro had no answer. Then Nalia appeared behind the curtain. For a moment, both of them were quiet. He looked around the tiny room. One bed, one plastic chair, a basin, a cracked window, her notebook on the table beside a candle. "This is where you live?" he asked softly. "This is where real life lives," she said. Tariro took a breath. "I think you were framed. I know I was framed. By Chief Badu. I know that too." He stared. "Then why did you not say it?" She gave a bitter laugh. "And say what? That a maid accused a powerful man of corruption? In your house, truth only matters when a rich person carries it." Those words hit him harder than he expected. Before he could respond, Mama Efua shuffled back into the room holding an old metal tin. She set it down carefully, as if it contained something sacred. "If he truly wants truth," she said, "then let him hear what your mother never lived to say." Inside the tin were documents. An old clinic wristband, a torn discharge record, a faded baby cloth embroidered with a gold lion crest. Tariro's face changed. The lion crest was the original emblem of DaCosta Holdings. Mama Efua watched him closely. Nalia was not abandoned. There was a fire at St. Anne's maternity years ago. Records disappeared. Some babies were moved. Some mothers died before names were confirmed. Her mother spent years saying the child of a wealthy man had been switched in the chaos. Nobody believed her. Tariro looked at Nalia, then at the cloth again. My father. Mama Efua nodded slowly. Your father lost a child that same week. The world seemed to stop breathing. Nalia stepped back. No. Mama Efua turned to her. Your mother kept these because she said one day the truth would need witnesses. Nalia shook her head. That does not prove anything. No, Tariro said quietly. But it proves enough to ask questions. And for the first time since her dismissal, Nalia looked afraid of hope. Back at the mansion, the gala had begun. Politicians, investors, celebrities, pastors, and cameras filled the ballroom. Gold drapes hung from the ceiling. String musicians played softly in one corner. At the center of it all stood Chief Badu, smooth as oil, preparing to announce DaCosta Foundation's so-called Urban Renewal Partnership, a project built on land people like Nalia called home. Celine smiled for cameras in a silver gown. Madame Essie moved from guest to guest, collecting admiration like tax. And Kwesi DaCosta himself, freshly arrived from London ahead of schedule, listened from the staircase with the reserved expression of a man used to controlling every room he entered. Chief Badu stepped to the microphone. Tonight, he said, we celebrate progress. We celebrate development. We celebrate a future worthy of this nation. Applause rose. Then the ballroom doors opened. Every head turned. Tariro walked in first. Behind him came Nalia, wearing a simple deep blue dress Mama Efua had borrowed from a church choir woman. She was not dressed like the rich, but she walked like she no longer wished to disappear. Behind her came Mama Efua, carrying the metal tin. The musicians stopped. Chief Badu's smile faltered for half a second. Madame Essie went pale with anger. What is this? Kwesi stepped forward. Tariro? His son did not answer his mother. He looked only at his father. Before this gala continues, there is something you need to see. Chief Badu moved quickly. This is not the time. Tariro turned sharply. That is exactly why it is the time. The room crackled with tension. Kwesi, sensing the weight beneath the disruption, nodded once. Speak. Tariro opened the tin and handed him the baby cloth. Kwesi's fingers stopped. He knew the crest instantly. Not the current company logo. The old lion crest only his late wife had ever sewn by hand onto gifts meant for their newborn daughter. A daughter who had been declared lost in a clinic disaster 23 years earlier. His face changed. The ballroom felt suddenly too small. Mama Efua told the story plainly. No drama, no begging, only facts. The fire, the confusion, the dead nurse, the missing files. Nalia's mother insisting the child had been switched. The years of silence. The cloth. The documents. The names. Kwesi's eyes moved slowly to Nalia. She stood still, chin lifted, hands trembling only slightly. Chief Badu spoke at once. Sir, with respect, this is emotional manipulation. Old papers, old women, convenient timing. We should verify privately. Privately, Tariro said. Like the land files you buried? Like the staff accusations you arranged? Like the girl you framed and threw out today? A murmur spread through the guests. Celine looked at Chief Badu in shock. Madame Essie whispered, "Tarito, stop this now." But Tarito was done protecting lies. He lifted another document. "These are the survey plans for the Coastal Clearance Project. They target low-income residents under the cover of charity redevelopment." The envelope was planted on Nalia because she had copied notes after overhearing Badu's men discussing forced evictions. Chief Badu's calm began to crack. "That is absurd." "Is it?" Tariro asked. "Because I already sent digital copies to legal review." That landed like thunder. Kwesi turned slowly toward his advisor. "Is there anything you want to explain?" Chief Badu opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Then Kwesi looked back at Nalia. "There are moments when powerful men are stripped of every title and left as only human. This was one of them. Not billionaire, not chairman, not legend. Just a father staring at the living shape of a loss he had buried 2 decades ago. He walked toward her carefully, as if one sudden movement might cause reality to break. "What is your mother's name?" he asked. Nalia swallowed. "Adwoa Mensima." Kwesi closed his eyes. That name hit him like history returning with interest. When he opened them again, they were wet. The ballroom watched in total silence as Kwesi DaCosta stood before the girl his household had humiliated, the girl his empire had treated as disposable, the girl he had passed in his own home without knowing. Then he said the words that shattered the night. "She is my daughter." Gasps rippled across the hall. Selene dropped her glass. Madame Essie staggered back into a chair. Chief Badu's face emptied of blood. Cameras flashed before security could stop them. But the real shock was not the statement. It was Nalia. She did not burst into tears. She did not collapse into his arms. She did not perform gratitude for the comfort of the rich. She only looked at him with years of pain held tightly behind her eyes and said, "If that is true, then where were you when my mother buried herself in struggle?" No one moved. Kwesi accepted the blow because he deserved it. "I was looking for a ghost," he said hoarsely. "And they told me she was gone." Nalia glanced toward Chief Badu. "Some ghosts are expensive to keep buried." That line spread through the room like fire. Kwesi turned, all softness gone. "Security." 2 guards stepped forward. Chief Badu lifted both hands. "You are making a terrible mistake." Kwesi's voice became steel. "No. I made the terrible mistake years ago when I trusted you." Badu was escorted out under the eyes of investors, ministers, donors, and cameras. Selene tried to speak, but Madame Essie silenced her with a stare heavy enough to crush bone. The gala had become a public execution of lies. But the most powerful moment of the night came next. Kwesi turned back to Nalia and said quietly, "Tell me what you want." The room assumed the answer would be money, a house, a title, revenge. Nalia looked around the ballroom, at the chandeliers, at the polished women, at the servants standing stiff along the walls, pretending not to exist. Then she spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "An apology is too cheap if nothing changes." The silence deepened. "I do not want diamonds," she continued. "I do not want a pity mansion. I do not want to sit at tables where people call cruelty culture. I want every domestic worker in your company houses given contracts, fair wages, and legal protection. I want the coastal families left on their land, or compensated honestly. I want a scholarship fund for girls who had dreams before survival interrupted them. And I want my mother's name remembered with dignity, not erased by wealthy silence. No one could look away. This was not a maid being rescued. This was a woman rewriting the terms of power. Kwesi listened without interruption. Then, in front of the entire ballroom, he answered, "Done." Madame Essie stood up, shaken. "Kwesi, you cannot make decisions like this in public." Kwesi looked at her once, and whatever she saw in his eyes made her sit back down. "I should have made them years ago." The next weeks tore through the DaCosta empire like a storm. Chief Badu was investigated for fraud, document tampering, and illegal displacement schemes. Board members resigned. Donors demanded reforms. The press fed on the scandal, but for once, the story did not end with the rich controlling the narrative. Nalia's words had changed the center of it. Domestic workers across DaCosta properties received formal employment terms. A legal aid desk was launched for household staff. The coastal redevelopment project was frozen, then restructured with resident representation. And in a move that stunned the city, Kwesi announced the Adwoa Mensima Foundation for Women's Housing and Practical Design. Its first scholarship was awarded to Nalia. But she did not move into the mansion. When people asked why, she answered simply, "Healing does not happen by returning to the place where humiliation felt normal." Instead, she chose a modest apartment near the new design center. She studied during the day, worked on community plans at night, and refused every magazine interview that wanted to turn her into a Cinderella story. Because this was not Cinderella. No prince had saved her. Truth had. Courage had. And the parts of her that refused to die in silence had. As for Tariro, he kept his distance at first. Not because he did not care, because he finally understood that caring without respect was only another form of entitlement. Months later, he visited the center during its opening exhibition. Nalia stood beside a scale model of affordable worker housing with courtyards, childcare rooms, solar roofing, and market access lanes. Schoolgirls clustered around her, asking questions with wide eyes. She answered every one, like the future was something she was building with her own hands. Tariro waited until the girls drifted away. "You did it," he said. Nalia smiled faintly. "I started. That is different." He nodded. "I wanted to tell you something. Back then, in the mansion, I thought defending you once or twice made me different from them." She looked at him calmly. "It did not," he said. "Not enough." Nalia studied him for a moment, then said, "Knowing that is a better beginning than most people ever reach." He exhaled, almost laughing. "Is that forgiveness?" "It is not punishment," she replied. And for them, that was enough. On the day the first housing block opened, Mama Sade came to see it with tears in her eyes. The chef brought too much food. The gardeners arrived in their best shirts. Women from Old Corlay walked through clean corridors with windows wide enough for air and light, touching the walls as though dignity itself had become solid. At the entrance hung a bronze plaque, Adwoa Mensima Community Houses, designed by Nalia DaCosta. Kwesi stood a short distance away, not beside her, not in front of her, but behind the line of women entering first. It was the first wise thing power had taught him in a long time. Nalia looked at the plaque, then at the women, then up at the building she had once only dared to sketch in secret. The rich had called her too small to matter, too poor to know better, too ordinary to be seen. But in the end, it was not the mansion that defined her. It was what she built after walking away from it. And somewhere in the crowd, a young maid from another wealthy house held her phone tightly and watched in stunned silence, realizing for the first time that invisibility was not destiny. Sometimes the most dangerous person in a cruel world is not the loudest one in the room. It is the quiet woman who survives long enough to tell the truth.